Oh hello, this is Tak Chung from Walk with Tak. Welcome to my YouTube channel. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe and share. Please feel free to write me at walkwithtak@gmail.com if you have any question regarding this video, as well as any video that I have posted in the past. And if you have any video that you would like me to make, please let me know. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. This video is a good example of a request come from a viewer. Connor wrote to me recently. He asked me to show him how to do a dish called chow that will allow him to cook a broth rice noodles without breaking it up. But let me first explain what is chow. This type of rice noodles very popular in southern part of China, which has a broad noodles instead of the narrow noodle form. And it's very popular in a particular chow called beef chow. When I was a child in Hong Kong, I remember this is a very popular dish, and in Cantonese it pronounced as gong chow ngao ho, and its translation is dry stir-fried beef noodles. Basically, what this dish is that you fry the noodle at high heat, and it causes the noodle to char, and it creates a nice smoky flavor, and this is frequently referred to as wok chi. This dish turned out to be quite difficult to make in the home kitchen because stir-fried rice noodle turned out to be quite a challenge, as Connor has found out. In comparison to wheat noodles, rice noodles, first of all, they break up very easily. And secondly, rice noodle, when it is wet, it tends to stick to the surface of the wok and it will end up burning. So when you stir-fry rice noodles, quite frequently you end up breaking up the noodles as well as have it stuck and burned. And a lot of time, the outcome is really messy. I loved this dish when I was a child growing up in Hong Kong, but I have not tried to make it myself because I know how difficult it is to stir-fry rice noodles. So when Connor wrote me, I decided I'm going to try to figure it out. I have a lot of experience in stir-frying different kind of noodles, from wheat noodles to rice noodles. So I think I know enough background that will allow me to figure out how to get it to work. And so I did. So this video will describe how I solved this problem. This kind of noodles frequently referred to as ho fan. The word ho means river and fan means noodle. And frequently they also refer to as sa ho fan. The word sa could mean sand or small pebble. So this type of noodle is referred to that the rice has been ground through a stone grinder. Like almost any noodles, it comes in a dry form. So the first thing I need to do is to boil the noodle. And I boil the noodle in my Cuisinart 14-inch stainless steel wok. And this is perfect for boiling all kinds of noodles. At the back of the package, it comes with instructions of how to boil the noodles. And it recommends only boil it for 1 to 2 minutes. That definitely is not long enough under the situation I am in. I find that in my case, I need to boil the noodles for about 5 minutes. I find that most of the time the instructions serve a good guide, but they do not always apply to the individual situation that I find myself in, because I will be using different type of cooking utensil, as well as the temperature of my boiling water might be quite different from what might be done in the factory. So each time when I try out some new food ingredients, I will look at the guidance provided by the package or by the manufacturer, and I will make modifications accordingly. In the past, I come to experience that if I follow the instruction exactly as suggested by the manufacturer, quite often things did not work out, simply because their condition might be quite different from mine. But each time when I use a particular ingredients, I learn from the experience. I'm able to extrapolate to a new ingredient. The first time might not turn out just right, but I will understand how it works and I can make modification accordingly. As in this case, what I'm looking for is that I want to boil the rice noodle that's soft enough that it is quite pliable. However, I don't want it to be too soft that it will break apart easily. Now the texture of the noodle turned out to be really important when it comes to stir frying. And because if it's just too soft, it would be easily broken apart with the wok spatula. The wok turned out to be really ideal for broiling noodles because you have quite easy access to all the noodles and you can stir them readily. And you can also check it much easier than if you were boiling them in a pot. As I was heating up the water on the stove, I prepared a large bowl of water. I used a plastic colander, which is extremely handy to have because I can transfer the noodle directly to the bowl of cold water. This will stop the noodle from continuing cooking. And then I can lift the colander and empty the water. Quite often, depending on the noodles that I'm using, I use a pair of scissors to cut the noodle into smaller pieces. And in this case, I definitely want the noodle to be shorter because otherwise they are going to be all tangled together and it makes frying much more difficult. I then drained the water from the bowl and I shook the colander over the bowl to remove any additional water, and I let the noodles to sit for about 2 or 3 minutes. And then I transfer them to a plastic container for storage. Based on my past experience, any type of noodles that if you want to fry them, you have to put them in the refrigerator to let it dry out, and usually about 24 hours. The longer, it is better. And this is true for almost any kind of noodles, whether it is wheat noodles or rice noodles. And if you do not go through these steps, the noodle will stick and burn to the bottom surface of the wok. I have let these noodles to stay in the refrigerator for about 48 hours before I'm going to use them in my stir-fry dish. Now, the first thing you will notice that as soon as you take the noodle out of the refrigerator is that they all stuck together. Because after you boil the noodles, the surface of noodles is covered with starch, and this starch tends to stick to each other. In the case of wheat noodles, I usually do not have any problem to use a pair of tongs to tear them apart. But when it comes to rice noodles, there's a huge challenge because rice noodles are far more pliable than wheat noodles. They will not be able to withstand the force by the tong in tearing them apart. So I need to find a different solution. And the best way to separate them is to warm them up because when you warm them, the starch tends to loosen and it's much easier for you to separate them. And so I warm them up in a microwave oven for about 90 seconds. I do not warm them up too much, just enough that I will be able to separate them. As you can see that it separates them much better after I have warmed them in the microwave oven. Totally, I warmed them up for about 90 seconds. I did 30 seconds at a time. I tear some of it apart and then I warm it up again for another 30 seconds. And usually by about 90 seconds, most of them are separated quite well. I'm going to fry them in my Cuisinart 14-inch stainless steel wok. I use my spot sealing method to create a non-stick cook surface in the stainless steel wok. And I start with 2 tablespoons of canola oil. I let the oil to heat up until it reaches its smoking point, and then I turn off the heat and I let it to smoke gently for another 15 seconds before I add the noodles to the wok. Here I want to demonstrate to you how important it is that the noodles should be broken up as much as possible. Because as you notice here, some of the noodles were still stuck together and the tong really did not do a good job in separating them. As you can see, when I try to separate them with the tong, I start to break the noodle apart. And this is probably exactly what happened to Connor when he tried to break the noodles apart before he treated them in a microwave oven. So what I should have done is that I should put this chunk of noodle back into a bowl and put it in the microwave and warm them up a little bit more and then gently tease them apart before I put them back into the wok. So my advice is that when you do this, make sure you have all the noodles separated out as much as possible before you add them to the wok. As you can see here, the heat of the wok indeed have separated the noodles, but by using the tong the way that I have tried to separate them, I end up breaking up some of the noodles. Here it also demonstrates the importance that you cut the noodles up into smaller pieces before you store them. Imagine if they have been all in long pieces, then breaking them up would be extremely difficult and you might end up tearing a lot of noodles. And now I have switched to the wok spatula, but I'm using it to toss the noodle very gently to prevent breaking them apart. At this point, you should see that the noodles do not stick to the bottom surface of the wok. If it does stick, there are three things potentially might have gone wrong. One is that your noodle is too wet. And secondly is that you don't have enough oil. A third is that you have not stir-fried the noodle enough to coat them with a thin surface layer of oil. The best way to stir-fry the noodles to achieve the texture that you want is that you toss it gently and you let it sit while it's being fried. You can fry it longer, depend on how much you want the noodle to be charred. In this case, there are very little sticking of the noodles to the surface of the wok, and if there is any, you can use the wok spatula like a scraper to detach them. And the best way to serve this noodle is to set them aside and then stir fry whatever ingredients that you add to it, and then you combine them at the end. This will allow you to maintain the crispy texture of the noodles, otherwise they will become soggy. Here's a demonstration that I create a stir-fried beef vegetable dish with this noodle, and I add the vegetable and beef on top of the noodles, and I use a pair of chopsticks to mix everything up. And then at the end, I garnish the dish with a touch of scallions. This makes a great meal. As you can see here, once you figure out how to create the chow fun, you can use it in many different applications. And this is the essence of my fast cooking system. By creating templates, you can create different variations in different types of dishes to increase your repertoire. It not only make your menu more diverse, but also make it more fun to cook. I post a video each day to help you to make home cooking as part of your daily routine using my fast cooking system. So if you'd like to learn more about this cooking system, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. So keep on cooking. I will see you tomorrow.